This is book number 6 called The Best Nest by Dr. Seuss. Mr. Bird was happy. He was so happy he had to sing. This was Mr. Bird's song. I love my house, I love my nest. In all the world, my nest is the best. Then Mr. Bird came out of the house. It's not the best nest, she said. I'm tired of this old place, said Mrs. Bird. I hate it. Let's look for a new place right now. So they left the old place to look for a new one. This place looks nice, said Mr. Bird. Let's move in here. But somebody else had already moved in. So they looked at another house. This one looks nice, said Mr. Bird, and there's nobody in it. You're wrong, said Mrs. Bird. This house belongs to a foot. So they went on looking. I like this one, said Mr. Bird. It was a pretty red flag on top of the roof. I've always wanted a house with a flag, said Mrs. Bird. Maybe this place will be all right. But it was not all right. I guess I made a mistake, said Mr. Bird. You made too many mistakes, said Mrs. Bird. I'm going to pick the next house. And here it is, right here. They flew in. They looked around. Isn't too big, asked Mr. Bird. I like this big place, said Mrs. Bird. This is the place to build our new nest. They went right to work. They needed many things to build a nest. First, they got some hay. They got some sew straws and brown straws. They got some sweatshirt string. They got some stocking string and mattress stuffing. They got some horsehair. They got some man hair. Soon they had all the hay, all the straw, all the string, all the stuffing, all the horsehair, all the man hair they could carry. They took it all back to build their nest. Mr. and Mrs. Bird worked very hard. It took them the rest of the morning to finish their nest. The nest is really the best, said Mrs. Bird. I want to stay here forever. Mr. Bird was very happy too. He flew around at the top of the house. He sang his song. I love our house, I love our nest. In the world, our nest is the best. He was so busy singing, he didn't even see Mr. Parker coming. Every day at 12 o'clock, Mr. Parker came to the church. Mr. Parker came to pull a rope. The rope went up the bird's nest. The rope rang the bell right under Mrs. Bird's nest. Miss Bird got out of there as fast as she could fly. When Miss Bird came in, all he could see was a mess of hay and string and stuffing and horsehair and man hair and straws. Where is Mrs. Bird? I will look for her until I find her, said Mr. Bird. He looked high, he looked low, he looked everywhere for Mrs. Bird. Mrs. Bird flew off. I'll never see Mrs. Bird again, he cried. It was getting dark. It began to rain. It rained harder and harder. Mr. Bird could not see where he was going. Crash! Mr. Bird bumped into something. It was an old house. That old house that Mrs. Bird hated. I'll go inside, said Miss Bird. I'll rest in here until the rain stops. Mr. Bird went inside, and there was Mrs. Bird sitting there singing, I love my house, I love my nest. In all the world, my nest is the best.